very well, thank you, Rachel. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. My name's Rachel McCrystal. I'm one of the associates of K Club, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest this morning, Simon Crump, who has been attending the K Club events for 9 years now, and is a regular at all our lunches and our breakfasts. So just before we kick off, Simon, and obviously delve into some detail about your business and how it's evolving as a result of the current pandemic, can you tell me a little bit about K Club, just why you come to K Club and the benefits of coming to K Club for you and your business?
Sure, yeah. Well, it staggered me when you said that I've been coming for 9 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that at all. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I originally started coming to K Club because of Matt Townsend. I've known him a long time. We've got very good friends, and he invited me along, and yeah, it was just a really great crowd of people, really friendly, not pushy like these business networks that you can go to, like the BNI or whatever, or other business networks where there's a lot of focus on getting referrals and all that sort of thing.
Pushing the sale in the first few minutes.
Yeah, exactly that kind of thing. It's not like that at all. It's very much the opposite. And it was just a really nice, relaxed atmosphere, really nice people. And so we kept coming along, and eventually we said, Matt, you know, sooner or later we're going to have to pay for something here. You're being very generous, and so we joined, and we became members, and yeah, the rest is history, I suppose.
Fantastic. And has it helped you to sort of get awareness of your business out there and generate new leads, and obviously meet new people and develop a new network?
Yeah, it's about creating relationships, isn't it, rather than making sales.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, going on from what we were saying before, it's not about, well, you know, let me find 10 people I can sell insurance to today. It's about building relationships over a long period of time, so that you think, well, you know, I know somebody who does this, and they need somebody who does that, and maybe if I introduce that person to this person, they can get something together, and that's what it's all about, and that's much more comfortable.
Yeah, the same works for Seashell, exactly. You know, that's how it's worked. It's about relationships and trust and building up that loyalty, isn't it? With
exactly, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we're absolutely delighted that you continue to be a member, and thank you very much for your support. So we'll just kick off initially with, I'm just really would like to learn about your business, and tell me a little bit about your business and how it's evolved over the times. Sure.
Yeah. Well, we started. I started in 2000 with RGS, and I've been working at Barclays through the 1990s, and that. I'd worked there 8 years. That corporate environment didn't really suit me very well. There's a lot of decision by committee, and it's an environment where you can't really feel that an individual can make a difference. I found that quite frustrating, quite stifling. So a round of voluntary redundancies came up in May 2000. I jumped at the chance to do that. And Rob Holmes, who you know, obviously, my co-director, he'd been a contractor at Barclays. I'd worked on some stuff with him. We did a couple of side projects outside of there as well. So we knew how to work with each other quite well already. And he set up a business. I think if you think back, accountants still talking about it now, but all the IR35 regulations.
Oh yes.
We're just starting to come in then, and it was big. Contractors were starting to get quite worried about, you know, how much tax they were going to have to pay and all this kind of thing. So he decided to move to a different model where there were 3 contractors working in an office in Salford Keys together, looking for projects that were being outsourced, rather than them just going sitting in somebody else's office and use their own limited company. They were restructuring a different way. So I joined up with those guys, and then, as luck would have it, a couple of weeks after I said, "Oh, can I come and join up with you?" We landed a really good project. So there's a company up in Blackburn, and they thought they were looking for an IT contractor, and Rob convinced them otherwise. He convinced them that what they actually needed was to outsource their project to his gang of 3, and and they realised, yes, actually, we don't just need an IT contractor because we can't manage an IT project. We don't know how to spec it out. We you know, if we just get an IT contractor and sit him in the corner and tell him to write some code, how does he know what to do? So, so they were convinced that what they needed to do was outsource their IT project to us. And that went very well. So 6-month project, they were, their business was selling display screen equipment. And they were interested in selling display screen equipment into places like shopping malls and things like that, where it was just at the beginning at that time, 20 years ago, you were starting to see display screen equipment in shopping malls where people would see adverts and that as they were walking around. So they decided to differentiate themselves from the competition. They needed some software to drive these screens, rather than just selling the screens, because anyone can sell a screen, buy it in the Far East and sell it at a markup. That's not a business that you can make a fortune in. So they decided they needed to differentiate. They needed a piece of software to as I say, differentiate their offering. So we wrote that, went very well. And the chairman of the group of companies who owned that company asked us to come and see him. And so we went to see him and he said, "Oh, you've done a great job of this. I've got this other idea. Why don't we set up another company to do this, to do some online video streaming?" So a bit like we're doing right now. We're looking into a camera, talking on the internet. But 20 years ago, nobody was doing this. And he wanted to be able to do presentations on the internet, synchronize them with some slides that he'd prepared, and just publish it himself onto the internet. Now, this is 4 years before YouTube existed.
Right.
So, so we wrote that for him and we set up a business. His interest was primarily in education. The chap concerned actually has a CVE for services.
You're talking about, I've had an engagement with him before,
Yes, that's right. I think we put you in touch with him. Indeed, to talk about the Seashell Trust. And so that business is still going. We rebranded it a few years ago. Never set the world on fire, but it makes a few quid. It does all right. And in actual fact, these days it's mostly used for corporate communications. So LexisNexis, big legal publisher, they use it. But from there, with a bit of word of mouth and contacts that we already knew, we grew a business. We grew to about 7 people, and at this stage we were all still working from home. So we pioneered this infrastructure. Again, before everyone really had broadband and people were still using ISDN lines for getting connected to the internet, we had permanent lines set up, we had VPNs set up between our houses. So it was like we were working in a virtual office. And obviously these days we're kind of moving back towards that, ironically. But we started there. As I said, when I first joined the business, they did have an office up at Salford Quays, but quickly got rid of that because we realised didn't need it. It was just an expense. So for years and years, we were working at home. We grew to about 7 people, which is probably about the most you can really manage without any kind of office at all. And then we shrank a little bit. Around about 2010, we shrank a little bit. We went back down to 3 people. But then we had a few projects come good. We had a bit of cash come in, so we thought, well, let's try and expand again. So 2015, we moved back into an office, the office we're in now in Mobberley, grew the team to about 10 people, took on some more projects, and that's pretty much where we are today.
That's an exciting journey. It's interesting how you then have to adapt to the environment, obviously, and what's going on in the climate. So that really brings me to the next question on, obviously we've had this pandemic, no one saw it coming, it's affected all businesses of all shapes and sizes. How has that affected your business, and what have you done really to sort of respond to that as a business?
Well, it's an interesting roller coaster. So I mean, like everybody else, we immediately saw that new projects that we were looking at, that we were trying to negotiate, were cancelled or put on hold. So a lot of things that we were hoping for didn't happen. There was a lot of fear in the marketplace. People were very worried about what their business was going to do. That knocked on. So we had invoices not being paid, and all this kind of thing. So cash flow started to become a problem. But I think with these threats also come opportunities, because people understand that the world will never go back to exactly how it was. You know, there's lots of things about this crisis that we don't like and that we don't want to become permanent features. But there will be some good that comes out of it as well. And people are discovering new ways to work, and there's all sorts of technology that's required. And people know that they have to modernize and digitize their businesses, and that's the kind of work that we do.
Definitely, just up your street.
So we've had to become, we've had to take a much more formal approach to business development. We can't just run our business anymore just by relying on getting business from friends of friends, because we've got to throw the net a bit wider. So yes, we've been coming up with all sorts of ideas, and every week we seem to have, when we have because we have regular team meetings every day online, 10 o'clock, and every week we seem to come up with new ideas for things, and it's so there's a few examples which I think you're aware of and that you've got inside the K Club. So one of the first things we did is we just produced a little website which was a COVID heat map, where you could drag a timeline around and see cases of the numbers of cases rising and falling through the world, and this kind of thing.
Saying that, and obviously it's really important because people, especially now if they're traveling as well, where I think the borders are open now, aren't they? We're seeing a lot more people travel, so that's a fantastic way of obviously seeing, actually, is this area, what is the the rate of growth of COVID. So what a clever idea.
You've got the R rate, obviously, and so as the epidemiologists sort of change the way they explain this to the general public, we sort of tweak our heat map as well, and change the way that works. So we're just in the process this week of changing that from saying, well, rather than base the size of the spot on the chart of how many cases there have been, what you really want to know is how many cases there are now. Yes. Because it doesn't, 3 months ago, it was really bad in your country. Well, that's bad news. But what I really want to know is what it's like now. Has it all been sorted out?
No impact me, or
can I go on holiday to Spain and feel safe? 3 months ago it was a mess. Now is it okay? And that's the information you actually want, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we did that, but then we started thinking about other things. So we started talking about what the new experience would be like, going to the pub. So we had lots of ideas about mobile apps for pubs, and I've been to a couple of pubs since they're reopened, and nobody's really caught on quite yet. There's you can click a QR code on the table, and all that really happens is it just brings up their website. Where you can do the track and trace, and so there's not a seamless experience there. So we came up with a load of ideas for an app there, and then just on Friday we were chucking some ideas around, and we realised that a feature in recent years of, say, going to Burger King or these places on the motorway, you go and stop and eat, you order by a touch screen, don't you?
Yes, you do, yeah.
And nobody wants to touch anything anymore. No. You go into these places and you think, do I really want to touch this? How many people have touched this? What's the odds that one of them is infected? Absolutely. When was the last time anybody sprayed it with anything? So really, I think what people want to do now is move away from touch devices and move to touch-free devices. So we're thinking, well, how about you could have an app that effectively projects some of the user interface from the screen in McDonald's or Burger King or wherever onto your phone. So every time you need to press a button, the buttons come up on your phone instead of you having to press them on the screen. So we were just chucking around ideas like this, and we're having ideas like this all the time.
That's
what we do to keep ourselves amused.
Like an eye gaze, you know, at Seashell, obviously with some of the students at Seashell who are obviously have, you know, profound disabilities and don't have any sort of movement, we'll use eye gaze. Could you create something where they can look at the screen a bit like Superman and have eye gaze?
Well, yes, that's right, and that's not something I've had a lot of contact with myself, but that's by having these conversations, you get new ideas, and the more conversations you have, the more ideas you get, and that's, you know, one of the things you lose from not having face-to-face meetings at K Club, because it's difficult to have those kind of conversations online. It doesn't work as well.
No, I agree.
So you need those kind of forums to have those conversations. But the objective for us is not necessarily, and this is the interesting thing, we're not necessarily thinking, well, we've had this idea for this pub app or for this touch-free app or whatever. Yeah. It's more a broader thing of making people understand what it is that we do and what we can offer. Yeah. So maybe, you know, it's unlikely that we'd find somebody who wanted to invest in us building a pub app, because the pub chains are all doing that. Maybe they've already some way along the road of doing it. But if people understand that's what it is that we do, that communicates our offering in a more
innovation, doesn't it, that you guys have come up with, and actually that model can be used then in a business to adapt to their own business model, you know.
And if somebody thinks, well, you know, I haven't got any touch screens, but what I have got in my office, I've got a load of security doors that have got keypads on, and people don't want to press the buttons. So if we could, and we can do all this as well, so we can prototype little hardware devices that you know, maybe you could incorporate those into the door security software.
Oh wow!
And then that device can have something in it that can communicate with your phone via Bluetooth or via the local internet or whatever. And you can have the keypad appear on your phone so that people don't have to press the buttons on the keypad on the door. And you know, maybe people are thinking, oh well, yeah, I can see how that kind of technology could help my business, or some monitoring technology or whatever, you know, anything. We're just trying to put out there what it is that we do to make people understand.
Fantastic. So where do you see the future then? What do you think? Well, obviously no one really knows, but you know, sort of even the next 6 months, where do you see sort of your business model going? Do you see it very much about sort of targeting specific businesses to obviously showcase this model, or is it, you know, it's that whole adapting? Because obviously we can't go out networking as much, and we can't go out to, you know, potentially face-to-face meeting lots of new clients. So how do you sort of envisage, you know, sort of the business development side happening for you and your business?
Well, that's the real killer
$1 million question.
And so yes, as I said before, we've been adopting a more formal business development process. We've got a couple of K Clubbers involved to help us out. So Claire Parker and Miles Lloyd have both been helping us out, and just trying to make our business development a bit more coherent, really, rather than the informal approach that we've had before. But yeah, we see people spending less time in their offices in general, and as we've alluded to earlier in the conversation, that makes the whole business networking and development more difficult, because when you're sat in front of somebody, the conversation can flow more naturally, and ideas tend to flow out more easily than when you're just sending emails to people and sending them links to your LinkedIn content and whatever. And so you have to think much more carefully about what that content does. And so, you know, we've been working with Claire on the LinkedIn content and other social media content, trying to make sure that we're giving people ideas through there, rather than just saying, yeah, hi, we're still here. Absolutely. Give us a call. You know, you've got to add some value.
Absolutely.
Somehow. And you've just got to chuck a load of stuff out there and try and get people thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's getting your brand and what you do at the forefront of people's minds, isn't it? And that, you know, LinkedIn is a classic and a really great opportunity to do that. Yeah, I think that's what I've seen. That we've seen that a lot, even in, you know, my sector, in the non-profit sector, where people are giving a lot of information away for free, you know, and putting it out there, and helping to advise and educate people. So we put get the brand and what we stand for at the forefront of people's minds. So then when it is at the right time, they're already engaged and they've already gone through some sort of journey with you as well through media or social media. Yeah.
And like you say, it's about putting some stuff out there for free. And we've seen this, you know, the whole internet age is based on the freemium model to some extent. And you know, you use Strava and everybody uses Facebook and all these things which are free for the users to use. Well, Strava's gone a bit more recently, but a lot of things which are free to use, and there's always a catch somewhere, isn't there? But nevertheless, people expect things to be free. People expect to get things for free. But what goes around comes around, and there's always a benefit at the end of the day, because you're building a reputation as somebody who can do something for people by doing that. And I've learned a lot from watching, you know, the way that Matt's done business for years and years, and all the energy that he's put into things like K Club, not necessarily expecting to get anything directly from it, but there is a benefit in the long term of doing these things.
Yeah, no, good. And that's what people have to see nowadays as well, isn't it? Is what's the long-term benefits rather than just those quick wins and the short-term gains. Because I think people want to see that actually it's about building up relationships, but actually you're in it for the long term rather than just on the quick win basis. Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, we're in the same. We're just about building relationships and building up that loyalty, you know, and keeping people on board on the journey. So I think everyone really is in their own boat, but definitely in the same boat. You know, everyone's got their own challenges, but you know, it's about that consistency as well.
And it does suit us because our business has always been built on long-term relationships. Anyway, we're not the sort of business that, you know, writes your website for a couple of £100. We've never had a turnover of clients like that. That's not how we work. So we work with people for years and years and years, and that suits really where everything's going.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh well, it's been really interesting. That's really interesting. Is there anything else that you want to add or anything you want to share before we wrap up our catch up this morning?
No, that's
we've covered most things. But no, that's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear a bit more about your business and a bit more about how you're adapting your business model in the current climate as well. Well, thank you. I just want to say thank you for taking the time this morning to come on and share any, you know, your tips and your insight into your business with everyone here at K Club. And hopefully we'll see you, if not at a virtual K Club gathering, hopefully soon, in not so distant future, at an actual breakfast or lunch where we can actually people can communicate face to face with masks on.
I'm looking forward to seeing some people in real life.
Me too. Oh well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Simon, and I look forward to catching up soon.